Good morning, my dear friends. My name is Sarita. Welcome to my channel. I am waking up, so good morning. And I need to get on the road tomorrow to go to my sister's house for like family Christmas stuff. So today we're gonna be batch filming. So many videos, so many. Because honestly, there are just so many that need to be done by the first of the year. So good morning, it's breakfast time. This is the first one. I've got my coffee. I've got some serious amarula, okay? And I have the final aspect of the Panettone here. Final Panettone. And I know it's really, I do not eat usually on camera, but like, this is just gonna be a very like gauche, inappropriate, but here we are kind of video. So yes, bear with me. I just need to eat breakfast and give you an amazing review. It will be amazing, I promise, because I owe it to you, of not one, not two, 3 Bath & Body Works candles, because that's how these videos need to go. You know what I mean? Ridiculous. And I counted like 7 times this morning because I'm just waking up. I think there are actually 2 Homeworks candles that I'm just not going to get to before the first of the year. And embarrassingly, I think they are the same 2 candles that I didn't get to at the end of November. But you know, posterity, etc. So I'm gonna just drop those because I think we'll be hard pressed if I do a video every single day leading up to New Year's. I still don't think we're gonna get to them. So they will be January candles. I'll tell you right now what they are. Citrus and spruce and Palo Santo pine. Okay. That's not too bad. Oh, you could burn either one of those in January. So I think we're just gonna shunt those off to January. And today we've got Bath & Body Works, 3 reviews. I have 3 reviews from Yankee coming up, as well as probably a Yankee candle in review. We'll just kind of do those in the same video. I do have another duo of candles to review from Homeworks, which I will get to. I have a Homeworks haul that I need to get to as well. And I will do the Homeworks year in review in that. And I have an empties, obviously, for December that I will do for January 1st. And then if I have time, and I can't remember if this was counted in one of the counts, I need to do a Bath & Body Works year in review. And I would love to do it in conjunction with a mini haul, and I know it's semi-annual. So I don't know if that's going to get done before January, but I promise that if it doesn't, that it'll be shortly after New Year's that I'll do the Bath & Body Works year in review, which will really just be a few of the new candles that I really liked this year. And I've been watching like Kent from Candle Channel and Greg from All About Candles. And they've mentioned a few that I, think probably deserve to be mentioned, but they didn't mention a couple of them. So I'm going to mention the ones that they didn't. And it may just be a peculiar thing on my, side of things that I enjoyed personally. I mean, I've said this for a bit. I don't think Bath & Body Works had a stellar year. I was amazed when Kent put his video up and he was like, the 8 best candles this year. And I'm like, 8? How did you get that number? How did you get that number? Because I'm pretty sure that I counted 0. 0 best new candles this year. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to steal my thunder from that video, but the year before that, it was just so obvious throughout the year. And I could do like a Sean from Hearthside style, like this is a 2024 Best New Candle nominee. You know, like at every point in the year, it was just obvious that this was a Best New Candle, right? I literally had no moments this year where it was like, this is obviously a Best New Candle. I did have a couple moments where I was like, you know, I think this could be an honorable mention for a Best New Candle. I don't think it's a Best New Candle, right? So we're going to talk about those honorable mentions. I do think Kent just kind of like, and he mentioned it at the top, that like, it was rough for him to find even 8, and he usually does 10. So yeah, I think that he's kind of aware of it too. And his very first candle, which when he started doing the video, I was trying to think of it. I'm like, he's like, see if what's number 1, and I'll like put it down in the comments and see if you're right, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I literally just could not think of anything. And then I was taking a walk and I was listening to him and I was like, oh, I know what he should have on his list. And I said, the Main Street Bakery candle, because I know he loved that candle and it was very, very popular. And I think fairly successful once everybody got past the point of realizing that it wasn't really a bakery fragrance, which I think initially kind of weirded everybody out and was like, bait and switch, you know? But then once they realized what it was and it was still a gourmand and et cetera, I think that one did very, very well. And it's coming back for January. It came back for the fall. And then I wasn't surprised when he made it number 1. And you all know that I'm not really a gourmand girl. So yeah, that's how Bath & Body Works went this year. I do think that was probably, I think it was probably the best new candle of the year. But do I think that in a stronger year, it would have been number 1 for Kent? No. And I think he would probably say that too, although I'm putting words in his mouth. But I suspect that even as much as he loved Main Street Bakery, in a stronger year, it may not have been number 1. You know what I mean? I think it would have been on the list. I don't know if it would have been number 1. So I feel like we should just do the Bath & Body Works year in review right now. We will hold off because I've got 3 candles for you from Bath & Body Works. This one, which is very, very recent, and this is a new candle, allegedly, Evergreen and Fir, in this lovely neutrals packaging. I could be wrong about this, but I do think they used to paint the neutrals labels on, and now they are very obviously labels rather than paint, which means that there were some janky label placements this year, especially on the Snowflakes candle that was whatever it was, the dark green. That was real janky in the store, which I think kind of undermines or takes away from the classiness of the neutral packaging. So I'm okay with it being a label. I would love for it to be centered correctly though. And these labels don't quite have the right texture so that you can hardly pick up the words on them, even when you're staring at them, but certainly on camera. So that's just my little, my little petty rant there about that. Otherwise, fine. I mean, I was grateful to see some new, you know, neutrals candles. We hadn't seen them since the fall, frankly. Nothing too big to write home about, although there was a vanilla caramel candle that I thought smelled fairly decent. But again, it's not my ballywick, it's not my wheelhouse, so I didn't pick this one up. This is supposed to be a new fragrance, so we'll talk about it. I did burn it all the way down. This one from their kind of aromatherapy thing, which I think was actually quite good this year, at least before we got to performance. This is Calming Skies, which is lavender and peppermint. Obviously, lavender is having a moment. Lavender is having a real trend kind of in home fragrance across the board, but certainly at Bath & Body Works. And it may be partly because of their kind of runaway success of roasted espresso, lavender, pink lavender and espresso a couple years ago, which I think they are trying to bottle for obvious reasons because it was a lightning in a bottle. And I do think, and I've talked about this before, Bath & Body Works has a few lavender fragrance notes, A couple of them are just very aromatherapy and not necessarily very pleasant or even very fresh or authentic. It's as close as it comes to quote unquote fresh and authentic, but it's really just a very cool, almost medicinal lavender note that often appears in much of their aromatherapy. Also appears, I think, in the French lavender candle and various other candles as well. Then they have another lavender note, which I think is stunning. And I think it is the note that they use in pink lavender and espresso. But more to the point, it is the note that they use in lavender and vanilla. And that is a fantastic lavender note. I mean, gorgeous. I'm not even a lavender person. And that lavender, I would go a long way for. That is a gorgeous lavender fragrance note. It's a little softer, it's a little fuller, a little sweeter, blends well with other things. It's just really fantastic. It's really fantastic. And it still has that kind of authentic lavender, like herbal kind of aspect to it. So yeah, at any rate, close parentheses on that. Third candle that I'm going to be reviewing for you today is Snowflakes and Cashmere, which I know has been out for a really long time. I thought the packaging was so sweet on this one. And I've always loved the fragrance of Snowflakes and Cashmere. And I even have it like in a body splash and, you know, shower gel, etc. I had never picked it up in a candle before. And I could tell from smelling it that this was not going to be a very powerful experience. But I went with it anyway because the packaging was so great. It was a sale, and I really do love the fragrance. I think it's a beautiful fragrance. Yes, it's a little bit like Bath & Body Works body care, but not overly so. And I think in a whole range of like Christmassy cashmere-ish body care fragrances, this is definitely the standout Snowflakes and Cashmere, at least for my money and for my tastes. So let's talk, right? Let's just start out with Snowflakes and Cashmere. Why not, right? Snowflakes and Cashmere, the notes on it are vanilla cashmere cream, caramel woods, and frosted clementine. Oh, it's so good. If I didn't know what the notes were, I would say it's sandalwood. I mean, it does say caramel woods, so who knows what caramel woods are? You know what I mean? It could very well be sandalwood. It, to me, has a very cozy sandalwood amber kind of feel to it. But, and I've noticed this about Bath & Body Works sandalwood fragrance note, their sandalwood fragrance note is a little on the flat side, and it's a little off-putting, I think. It's just kind of flat. It's not dynamic. It doesn't have a whole lot of richness. It's very, for lack of a better term, it's very brown. It's just a very brown sandalwood and kind of like brassy a little bit, but also just like I said, very flat and aggressive, especially in their like coconut sandalwood candle, for instance. This is a really lovely light touch of a sandalwood. And then there is a lot of vanilla, a lot of vanilla. And it does have a little bit of a like fresh, almost like clean, fresh kind of aspect to it as well, which almost goes a little bit laundry, but doesn't. I mean, again, what I love about this fragrance is the balance and the restraint. It's this, and this in perfect measure. Perfection, right? Little bit of sandalwood, little bit of amber, little bit of vanilla, little bit of cotton freshness. Yes. I don't know if it's cotton, but it does kind of have a little bit of a like fabric kind of note, just a tiny, yeah. And then a tiny bit of freshness and a lot of sweetness. And I don't know entirely where the sweetness is coming from, although it is possible that it's like the sweetest version of their sandalwood, the sweetest version of their cashmere note, the sweetest version of, you know, their vanilla, etc., etc., etc. It's just kind of like, maybe it's the sweetest version of every single one of those fragrance notes. The weird note here is the frosted clementine, and I have never been able to smell anything remotely citrus, but there is a real brightness about the candle. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's a sparklingness, but it's a brightness that you wouldn't expect from kind of a sandalwood, an amber, a vanilla, even a cashmere. You're thinking that candle is, all those things are lovely. They're kind of lower range, and they're cozy and warm, but they're not necessarily bright. And there is a brightness to this candle, which is really welcome and fantastic. It reminds me to some extent, and I know I've been talking about this a lot in recent videos, but the golden cashmere candle from Kringle, it's in that vibe of gold and cashmere. Golden cashmere is a more brilliant candle than this and a more brilliant fragrance, a little bit more premium, but very much in this genre of it being kind of a cozy cashmere kind of candle that has an unexpected light and brightness. And that is exactly what is captured here. So it's possible. I mean, I don't want to call Bath & Body Works a liar here. Perhaps they do have some sort of fruit in here and some sort of, even a citrus. But you're not getting zest here. You're not getting a really, really high piercing or acidic citrus note. And it could be that the citrus is added in such small measure that, again, and many of Harry Slatkin's candles do this too, where he adds a fruity finish to something. And sometimes it's a fruity finish that you can't even really discern as fruity so much, but it just lightens up the fragrance a little bit. Or in the case of like one of his tree conceptuals, the addition of a little bit of citrus or fruit just kind of lights the branches from within, basically, so that they glow and you can really appreciate the depth of the green range, that it's not just a dark, flat kind of spruce range, but it's also like this light, bright, almost yellow-green, still alive kind of botanical freshness and authenticity, if that makes sense. And all that citrus does is not really stand out. You don't really smell it as citrus. You just smell the contribution of that citrus as kind of a leading, or not a leading lady, as kind of second fiddle or a supporting cast to what is really like the tree or whatever else. So I'm wondering if there is citrus here, that it's being used exactly in that kind of a thoughtful and masterful way to simply light up the existing and discernible fragrance notes of sandalwood, amber, cashmere, etc. Light it from within and make it just a really, so that the fragrance doesn't sink in on itself. And don't get me wrong, even if it did sink in on itself and was a little heavy, it's still a point of view. It's still kind of one of those cozy sandalwood, amber, cashmere fragrances that would still perhaps be very pleasant. But the lightness and brightness of this fragrance is, I think, what makes it kind of special. And like I said, the restraint and the balance and every single note playing its role, sounding its note without overwhelming any of the others. I mean, that's the mark of a really good conceptual, frankly. Not knowing when one note ends and the other begins. It's fantastic. So I do think that Snowflakes and Cashmere is one of their better fragrances. Does it smell like Jo Malone or some sort of premium conceptual? No, it does not. Does it smell, because especially of that like fresh, clean note, does it smell like it could very easily be a body wash? Yes, it could. And in fact, it is, and we all know that. But it stays just the side of like screaming in neon lights, I'm a Bath & Body Works body care item. It stays on this side of that. And like I said, the restraint and the balance and the lightness, and it's like not trying too hard. I just think it's a fantastic fragrance. I really do. I have always thought it was great. It's also, if you like the In the Stars fragrance, again, not In the Stars. In the Stars is this, but a lot more powerful and a lot more rich, etc. I've always loved In the Stars. A little bit more carameled too, In the Stars is. But this is kind of like a more subtle sister to In the Stars. Really fantastic fragrance. unfortunately, I haven't really talked about anything that's uniquely candle-ish. And unfortunately, the strength and throw on this was just not good. It really wasn't good. There were a couple burns where like I would burn it for hours and the stars would be aligned and it would be in the proper space and I could get a little bit of a presence of Snowflakes and Cashmere. It's obviously a beautiful bedroom scent, but to be honest, it would get lost in my bedroom more often than not, and I didn't love that. This is a fragrance I wanted my entire bedroom to smell like, 1000%, and I just don't even know. If you've got a sizable bedroom, especially with an attached like master bath, which is what I have, like it's gonna get lost. It's gonna get lost, and even in a master bedroom kind of setting, I mean, maxing out maybe out of 5, you know what I mean? And I think you were kind of lucky to get a 5. This was unfortunately burned more than it should have been in the guest bathroom where, you know, I could get something out of it. But again, even in the guest bathroom, it was kind of coming in at about a 4 or a 5. So not great performance. Partly that's due to the profile of the fragrance. It is a softer and much more subtle kind of fragrance. And because they haven't like dialed the sandalwood and the amber up to like 12 on a scale from 1 to 10, because of the delicacy and because of the balance, that also means that it's going to be harder to amplify it. Yeah. So I would hate for the fragility of the fragrance and the sweetness and the lightness of it to be subtracted or undermined by a louder performance. If they could not amplify it without cheating some of that amazing delicacy, then I think they should just probably keep it the way that it is, and you just know that it's going to be an underperformer. You know what I mean? Gosh, if they could amplify it a little bit more though, and still keep those amazing qualities of the fragrance, I just think that would be fantastic. But I don't regret buying it. The packaging is so cute and sweet. Look at the owl, and he has glitter gold earmuffs on. Really beautiful packaging here, and a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. What can I say? That really should be a 3-wick candle and should be a 3-wick candle for your bedroom, 100%. Also a fantastic burn in January, even January, February, to be honest. It's just unfortunate that it does not perform. So there you go. All right, let's move on to another one here. This one is Lavender and Peppermint, which I also loved the fragrance. I mean, the packaging on this one. Even more stunning was the Lavender and Pine candle. Oh, fantastic. Apparently, this was kind of a standalone aroma body care item for them this year. And a really beautiful one, a really seasonal one. And really tapping into not only the peppermint, which is super seasonal, but also the lavender, which is like one of those trending fragrance notes right now. Just a really, in concept and in packaging, fantastic, knocked out of the park. I've had this conversation in a couple other videos recently. Aromatherapy has kind of taken a hit at Bath & Body Works over the last few years. I don't really know why. Aromatherapy used to be an enormous part of their, I think, frankly, an enormous part of, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the back office. I don't know the numbers, but it seemed like it was a fairly strong part of their catalog and a strong part of their revenue. The aromatherapy for a very long time, like, was one of the few things in the store that did not go on sale ever. Even when they did like semi-annual, or when they would do like, you know, a body care price point for any reason, the aromatherapies would be left out. They would be exceptions to the rule. And I think it was because the aromatherapy were considered a bit higher quality, and also they were just kind of like a destination collection. There were people who loved the depth, the richness, the unexpectedness. There was often a greater effort to pare down fragrance notes, make them a little bit more austere. And for those of us who love those kinds of things, this is kind of the collection we would gravitate to. And it wasn't like overtly masculine, for instance, or overtly feminine. Then there was a period of time where they started including aromatherapy in sales. And it was about at that time that the quality of the collection started significantly going downhill. So not a coincidence. And the fragrances just started smelling cheaper. They all smelled the same. There was an inclusion of that very familiar Bath and Body Works body care shower gel kind of note in many of them that overwhelmed whatever authenticity of fragrance notes or austerity those fragrances actually had. So that the difference between that fleet of aromatherapy fragrances versus the usual Bath and Body Works shower gels or lotions, the gap was narrowed significantly. They were almost indiscernible with some of the fragrances that they were putting out, especially some of the more feminine ones later that were like rose and something or other. And it was just kind of like, why is this even in the aromatherapy? There's nothing about this fragrance that screams aromatherapy. There is a lot about this fragrance that screams, I'm a Bath and Body Works shower gel, right? So I feel like that was kind of the downfall of the purity of that collection just got so run into the ground, I think, so watered down that it was indiscernible from the other stuff on the floor, and then it just went away, basically. So the only two major like aromatherapy things that are still kind of in stores are their original kind of OG, the mint and eucalyptus one, which is certainly the most aggressive of all of the aromatherapies, maybe even the first one that came out. And it's kind of in the same category, although it smells nothing like it, but it's in the same category as like mahogany teakwood. Like there are people, my stepmother included, who still talk about that fragrance and want one like every Christmas because it's so soothing, etc., etc. I personally, it's way too aggressive. It's always been way too aggressive for me. It's in the same category as that lavender note that they've got that's just kind of like dialed up in the medicinal category far more than it should. It doesn't have a whole lot of nuance to it, but God bless, it's been like an enormous bestseller for them for like probably decades. And it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon, even though it's like one of the very few remaining aromatherapies on the floor, marked still as aromatherapy. There's another one too that flanks it, and I can't remember which one it is. There's another one, and it's like a softer one maybe. It's not the sleep one, is it? Is it sleep? Is it some sort of lavender something or other? Might be a lavender something or other. Yeah, I think it is. But it's like not very good. It's just really not very good. But at any rate, those are the two that are left. And they've had some really good aromatherapies in between, more limited editions that are just gone now. At any rate, they did this year come out with there were two limited edition aromatherapies maybe 2 or 3 months ago. One was the Mineral Stone Spa and the other was the Cedar sauna cedar. I don't know what else it was. I bought both of those in sprays because I teach at a yoga studio and I take them to the yoga studio. They were, yes, they're a little bit more perfumey than they should be. Like they're not straight up like doTERRA essential oils, but for the way that aromatherapy finished at Bath and Body Works, definitely much more of a throwback to the era when like their aromatherapy actually did have kind of more of a like pure essential oil kind of feel to it, at least in some of the fragrance notes that were offered in these like conceptuals. So I was very happy with Mineral Stone Spa and with Cedar Sauna, and maybe we'll see them in semi-annual. They've been off the floor. Once the holiday stuff came out, like all that stuff was cleared away. So they weren't even on the floor for that long, but I thought that they were really, really good. And I was kind of hoping like maybe they're returning to their like aromatherapy days. Anyway, close parentheses. This was given to us as kind of a holiday aromatherapy, and it's a really good one, and it fits fine within the aromatherapy thing. Lavender and peppermint. I don't know how balanced this fragrance is. It's got a lot of peppermint in it, and I don't know that the lavender can really compete with it very well. But you can smell the lavender. You can. And I do think it's the good lavender fragrance note. They probably should have used the bad one because the bad one is so sharp and so medicinal that it might have competed better with the peppermint. But then that mentholated aspect and medicinal aspect would have just been off the chart. So I think that they were right in adding like the really soft and nice lavender into this, but I think they needed to dial the peppermint down quite a bit. And they may have added it here 50-50, you know, like 50% lavender, 50% peppermint. But given the aggressiveness of the peppermint note, and just the way the peppermint is in its fragrance profile across the board, like they probably needed to do like 30% peppermint, 70% lavender to be able to like get like a good balance on the lavender and really allow the lavender to speak. That said, especially with that really soft and beautiful lavender, you would have problems then with projection and amplification. And this candle was not necessarily a very powerful candle anyway, even with the runaway peppermint. So there's that too. They may have like been like, well, but when we dial it down, then like we can't get any kind of strength and throw from it at all. You know what I mean? So maybe it was kind of a tough fragrance to capture or to formulate. I don't know. You can smell the lavender. And I think that if you didn't know that lavender was in it and you picked it up and you smelled it, you would realize that there was another dimension to this that wasn't peppermint, and you could probably identify it as lavender, especially if you're pretty good in your nose. So check the boxes there. It is a lavender and peppermint. I don't know that it's a whole lot other than lavender and peppermint, but because that lavender note is so rich, so soft, so warm, so it's not just like firing brittly in one range. It gives the entire fragrance a bit more dimension than otherwise it would have. Yeah. The notes on it are a blended aroma of lavender, cool peppermint, warm patchouli. Okay, so this was supposed to have patchouli in it. There is a warmth to the fragrance coming primarily from the lavender, and I associated it with the lavender because they do have a really nice lavender fragrance note that is very, very warm and sweet and soft, but also herbal, etc., etc. So if I smelled this, there's no way that I would think patchouli on it. I would just think that the warmth in the fragrance is coming from that beautiful lavender fragrance note. I just don't get any patchouli at all. I really don't. There is like a little bit of a warmth that could possibly be kind of musky, but it's hard to tell with the peppermint and with the lavender. So there you go. I'm not saying that there isn't patchouli in this. I just don't think you're gonna smell it. And I'm kind of surprised at the fact, especially since it's not really speaking, either on cold or burned. I'm kind of surprised at their interest in even listing it on the bottom of the jar because patchouli is such a polarizing fragrance note. You know what I mean? The only thing that I would think is that they really were trying to keep it solidly in the aromatherapy category. And so they wanted something other than peppermint and lavender to like signal that it is aromatherapy as opposed to, you know, and that's what they've got there. They wanted it to be aromatherapy truly rather than one of their other candles. But again, you're kind of left in that conundrum where it's like, but is it really aromatherapy? If you just marketed this as you did lavender and pine, as peppermint and lavender, couldn't it just be one of your regular candles? I don't know that there's anything specifically aromatherapy about this, especially given the lavender that they used here and the fact that the peppermint does kind of smell a bit like a candy cane as opposed to like a medicinal peppermint, if that makes sense. All of which makes the candle very, very pleasing, and in many ways more pleasing than many of the aromatherapies that they've given us, but again, not really an aromatherapy. This is one of those fragrances that's beautiful and is gorgeous, but rather than like cliched, but also shouldn't be in the aromatherapy collection. All right, anyway, close parentheses there. I really liked this fragrance. It got a little bit moderately sooty, maybe even more than moderately, but I burned it long. I mean, like we're talking 8 hours sometimes. because I wanted more from it. And every time that I burned it, I was like, give me more, give me more, give me more. Maybe this just has soy in it. And if I burn it for 8 hours, maybe like it will hit that sweet soy spot and like start throwing. And it just didn't. It really kind of plateaued out at like, even in the back bedroom, I think it plateaued out at like a 6. And don't get me wrong, a 6 with that kind of candy cane peppermint is totally fine, but I just wanted more from it. I just did. I wanted it to be a 7. And if I could have everything in the world, I would have liked that peppermint candy cane dialed down a little bit more and the lavender even bigger. And then I just think it would have been a best new candle. I mean, it just would have been fantastic, right? As it was, it's not a misfire, but there are some execution issues. There just are. The peppermint overwhelms the lavender, and the projection of both is not enough. It's kind of in the 6 range. That said, a lot of people really hated this candle. I'm not really sure why. And I really liked it. I liked it enough to buy another one. I didn't buy another one because I was very lucky. I ordered online from Bath & Body Works, and I ordered many different candles, and weirdly, they sent me 2 of the lavender and peppermints instead of like another candle that I ordered. And of course, then they let me keep this second lavender and peppermint. So I have 2 lavender and peppermints, and I was almost gonna take the lavender and peppermint and take it to this like white elephant gift. And then I'm like, no, I like this candle too much. I'm keeping it. So I'm really excited, especially January, February. Fantastic candle, mainly January, because you know, the candy canes in February get a little bizarre. But you could still do the candy cane, you know, especially first few weeks of January, especially when it's combined with something lavenderish. Really nice for January. So, hey, if you see it in semi-annual sale, it's not bad, especially if you can get it for a really good price. I liked it a lot. Like I said, I just think it needs to go back to the drawing board a little bit in terms of execution, okay? So last but not least, Evergreen and Fir. So Kent from Candle Channel said that there is a Evergreen candle, and I think it's just called Evergreen, that was an old Bath & Body Works candle, like back in the day. I don't know if it was like Slatkin era, but it might have been Slatkin era, right? And apparently it hasn't seen the light of day for a long time. And he was really hoping that, you know, when he saw the notes for it, that this was going to be, in fact, Evergreen. He smelled it and he thought that it smelled very, very close to Evergreen, if not Evergreen itself, but he didn't have an Evergreen to kind of compare and contrast. So for all intents and purposes, this may in fact not be a brand new fragrance, but simply a repackage of Evergreen from back in the day. The notes on it are white fir needles, fresh cedar wood, and sweet sap. It's a nice candle. And for Bath & Body Works, it's a little bit more austere and authentic than many of their tree fragrances. I will give it that. There is something almost damp and mossy. Not quite overt, but it's there. Not quite as overt as like the Fall Forest candle, for instance. It's something almost a little bit mossy. Obviously something pine-like. It says fir needles. I'm feeling like it's a little bit more pine-like, but the cedar wood here, which just kind of like blends in with that fir note or pine note, is warming up the pine, because pine can be a little bit sharp, a little bit aggressive, and it can just be very, it can also go a little medicinal, because a lot of cleaning products have that kind of a pine note in it. So the cedar wood is very, very welcome, very thoughtful, because it's going to warm it up and kind of balance the pine aspect of it with the moss. So for me, if I didn't read the fragrance notes, that's what I would say. I would say it's a pine with a warmer wood, like a cedar wood, and a moss note. That's not too damp and it's not too earthy, but it's there and it's providing some amount of earthiness, and to mention in kind of a foresty kind of way. There is also, if I'm not mistaken, a good amount of amber in this. And it's a Harry Slatkin kind of amber finish, right? which makes me think that perhaps it is a Harry Slatkin candle, right? And the amber and the sandalwood are both warming up the fragrance significantly. For me personally, I didn't need the amber. And I think we could have stayed just with the cedarwood. The cedarwood with the pine with the moss, I think would have given a much more authentic, fresh, outdoorsy kind of vibe. The amber note in it made it more conceptual, made it, I mean, it's not a body care fragrance, but it just pushed it closer than I wanted it to come to a personal fragrance kind of vibe. Yeah, like I said, it's not full-fledged personal fragrance. It's really not, but it just narrows the gap a little bit more than I would want. And like I said, if that had been left out and they had just relied for the warmth on a cedar wood and a much, perhaps even stronger wood note coming out there, I think it would have been a much more unique, expressive, outdoor kind of candle, and very much within the vibe and genre of the Neutrals collection. And then once it was burned, it got even more amberfied. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. The strength and throw on it wasn't great either. I want to say that in the back bedroom, which is where I kept it for most of its existence, it kind of dialed in at about a 5 maybe, but I think it was closer to a 4.5, to be honest. 4.5, which wasn't great. And weirdly, this candle burned very fast. I don't know if it burned hot necessarily, it just burned fast. It was like the density of the wax was just not there or something. I don't know. But like, I felt like it was 3 burns and done, basically, which was fine because I didn't love it and I didn't need it to last longer than 3 burns, but it was what it was. That's Evergreen Fir. I don't know that I would repurchase it again. I just don't know if it's worth it. I think there's the beginnings and the potential for a really great fragrance there, especially for Bath & Body Works, but it's just not quite there. So I think, again, execution issues with that one as well. But of the 3, I'm most happy with the Lavender and Peppermint, and it's the one that I would repurchase. And I'm going to be looking for it in semi-annual because I wouldn't mind backing that one up. I really like it a lot. It makes me want to try the Lavender and Pine one. And I know that people hate the Lavender and Pine one. And they're like, it doesn't have any lavender in it. It's just like pine or spruce. And it's just weak pined spruce. And you can get that from Fresh Balsam or something like that, you know? And a lot of people have said that. But then there have been a couple people who really like the lavender and pine. And I think that's enough for me to just want to like pick it up and try it. So if I see lavender and pine in the semi-annual, I will pick it up. Also, got a sister-in-law who would probably appreciate that candle. So I think I'm gonna get her lavender and pine if I can find it. The packaging is so beautiful on it. Spoiler alert, when I do the homeworks haul, I found a ton of these at Marshall's and TJ Maxx. They are these amazing like hobnail kind of vessels, which we've become used to kind of seeing somewhat at whatever. And it's a 3-wick, but this is a vanilla birch. And the vanilla birch, or I'm sorry, birchwood vanilla, which is a very strong, very great performing candle for Harry Slatkin, probably one of his best. And my little sister already smelled it because I bought one in Columbus and she was like, oh, I like that. And I'm surprised because she's in her basic era, you know, her cinnamon roll era. But even she was like, oh, that's fantastic. And she's going to like it even more once it's burned because it just gets so gooey, syrupy. So she's going to love this one. So I went ahead and bought like, I mean, at $12.99, I was like, okay, all the women in my house are getting, all the women in my family are getting a birchwood vanilla for Christmas. So I bought like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them, something like that. But I do have one lone sister-in-law who doesn't like fragrance. Ugh. You know, one of those people that's like, it bothers me, it gives me a headache, like, blah, blah. I'm allergic, who knows what. So, but the only kind of candle that she does like, and she said this before and she's bought one for me, is a tree fragrance. So I'm thinking I'll actually get the lavender and pine candle for her, because not only does it look stunning, but because I thought about getting her fresh balsam, but like fresh balsam is so aggressive and is so loud, and given her vibes, which is like very granola, very natural, and the fact that fragrance kind of bothers her, I'm thinking fresh balsam is not the right pick in this situation. So I was gonna do the Under the Christmas Tree, which I like, but Under the Christmas Tree does have, it's more of a conceptual, and it does have like some musk in it, etc. So I actually think that lavender and pine will be the right candle for her, because if it underperforms, that's fine. She's an underperforming kind of, I mean, that sounds horrible. She's not an underperforming person, but you know what I mean? Like, she needs a candle that underperforms. And with the lavender and the pine, I think that that's gonna be the right vibe. So that's what I'm gonna do for her. Anyway, close parentheses. If I see that lavender pine, I'm gonna get one for her and one for me. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. I'll link anything down below if it seems to be available online at Bath & Body Works. But I think with all three of these, you're gonna be able to find at least one or two of them in store. I don't know which ones are dropping for semi-annual. I suspect not Evergreen Fir. It's so recent. And it is one of those candles that is not necessarily holiday-ish, even though it does have some good pine notes in it. I think we're gonna see that on the floor for quite a bit. Just regular Snowflakes and Cashmere will probably be clearanced off, and probably Lavender and Peppermint will too. I suspect they're not gonna stay. I think that was a very limited edition aromatherapy with the peppermint, the candy cane peppermint in it. So there you go. All right, my friends, one candle review down, 3 candle reviews down, actually. You're welcome. Like I said, I'll link below if anything is available, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, my friends.